Thank you very much. Well, first of all, good evening, and thank you all for taking the time to come here to this extraordinarily timely debate that the European Food Forum has decided to organize so well and in such short time to give us the opportunity on the day that the European Commission has published their proposal on new genomic techniques to be able to listen to different perspectives, different views on the issue, and really to be able to have a conversation of what do we think are the strengths, what are the challenges, and how do we move forward to actually get this thing done within this legislative agenda. So with breeding and selection expected to be quicker and more precise, NGTs are poised to be a valuable instrument in the farmer's toolbox, in addition to consolidated and emerging green farming practices. So the purpose of today is to debate on the potential of NGTs to counter big challenges related to climate change, sustainability, and food security. Obviously, there will be a big conversation around aspects which could condition the successful acceptance and use of NGTs. And this event will touch upon various aspects of the debates, such as how do we provide access to the technology to all farmers? Will the new regulatory framework ensure reasonable approval times to plants developed with NGTs? How to ensure freedom of choice all along the food supply chain, from seeds to fork, and many other questions. I think that this is such an amazing forum to be able to have this conversation. So I would like to thank the European Food Forum for organizing this. The European Food Forum is an independent, politically led, non-partisan forum led and governed by elected members of the European Parliament, with the aim to promote an open, multi-stakeholder dialogue on sustainable food systems among policymakers, food supply chain actors, civil society organizations, research and academia, and other public institutions. So the European Food Forum does not itself take position on specific policy issues, but is an amazing forum for us to have these extraordinarily interesting and timely debates. So a very big thank you to the European Food Forum and, of course, to the members of the European Parliament who are kindly hosting this event, Madame Irene Toléré, Madame Michaela Šojdrová, and Mr. Piero Fiocchi. Before giving the floor to or opening the debate, I would like to create some rules of procedure. The aim of today's event is really to be an inclusive conversation and discussion. So there will be ample time for questions and Q&A. So if you're in the room, quite traditional, you just raise your hand and I'll try to give everyone the opportunity to engage. If you're joining us online, there's both the chat where you can give questions or you can raise your hand in the virtual world. So please don't be shy. The one thing that I would say, of course, this is a 2-hour event. There are a lot of different points to present and there will be a lot of questions. So we're going to ask you to keep any question quite short and to the point so we can really have a vibrant debate. The same holds obviously also for all the speakers and contributors. I know you've been given short time and there's a lot of things to say, but we hope to be able to touch upon some of the things maybe that you can't cover in your talks also in the debate. So please try to stick to your allotted time. This is a recorded event, so just so you know, and there are also some journalists among us. So this is for your information. But that's enough from me. I would like to start by giving the floor to our kind hosts, Madame Irene Toléré, who's also the chair of the European Food Forum.
Thank you very much, Erika, and thank you everybody for being there. At long last, we have the proposition from the Commission. We have had many discussions already in various formats on this text. It's not the Harry Potter magical wand, but it's a tool that we need one of the tools that we need to be able to deliver on the Green Deal and objectives and farm to fork strategy. So I'm very happy and very proud to be there with you to listen to you on this proposal that will be explained tomorrow in Comagri. And most probably what you will say will help me to put questions to the Commission tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Irene. I'd now like to give the floor to Michaela Šojdrová.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to co-host this event in this day D, I should say, because we really expected the launching of the new regulation. So I'm very happy for this. For me, it's a little bit exciting moment because I was once who started the debate on agriculture committee 3 years ago about these issues. I'm a big supporter of permitting genome editing techniques in agriculture, and my expectation is today's draft regulation should stop conflict that has been a source of frustration between researchers and agriculture industry. So my expectation is really high for today's discussion, which are starting the process. Commission draft recognizes that certain new genomic techniques are an equal version of conventional plant breeding methods, but we know that this method is faster. I also welcome that the Commission does not require prior case-by-case risk assessment for certain new genomic techniques and considers a notification to national competent authorities as sufficient. I also supported that there will be no obligatory label requirement. The labeling of the seeds and their inclusion in a public register should be sufficient for part one for the one NGTs group. However, I centrally expect a further discussion whether to stigmatize new genomic, if it's necessary to stigmatize new genomic products by banning them from the use in organic agriculture, in organic farming. So it's for me a question. To conclude, I consider the draft regulation as substantial and promising, and I am very happy that the Commission recognized the importance of new NGTs for our EU food production. So from today till the legislative agreement, we will have a lot of discussion and we will have a lot of work to do, and I will support this important process, hopefully until the successful agreement. So thank you, and I am looking forward to discussion.
Thank you very much. And thank you also for highlighting the importance of this issue in the broader questions of reaching the goals that we have set for ourselves with this Commission in the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, and the position of something like this in enabling that. So now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Pietro Fiocchi.
Yes, as a European Food Forum, we are facing a lot of battles and a lot of problems because we are looking at, and I'm a shadow rapporteur on packaging, on CLP, so the labeling and everything else, and a revision of REACH, which could have an impact on a lot of food producers, and so on and so on and so on. But definitely the topic of genetically modified organism with the new genomic technique is extremely important, especially considering the climate change that we are going through. So we need to have an agricultural production which is obviously using less water than we used before, less pesticides, less fertilizers, and so on and so on and so on. And one of the good, strong answer is the new genomic technique. There are some technical and juridical problems on this topic. Number one, there is a sentence by the European Court that basically equiparates the genetically modified organism to the new genomic technique thing. So from a juridical point of view, it's necessary to have a differentiation between the two. There is also a very scientific but also practical problem in which while you can determine a GMO by the DNA assessment, it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, on some of the new genomic differentiation. So also from a point of view of controlling the system and regulating a system, there are some big technical problems that, of course, we need to address and we need to solve. Other than that, I'm a strong believer that this is a very important solution and a must for us to go on in this direction. I'll leave the floor to the others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've really understood here the complexity of the issue that we're here to discuss. And I think that is one of the things that always makes these kind of debates both very interesting and also very difficult. So to give us a bit of an overview of what actually are we talking about? So what is this NGT legislative proposal? What's in it and what are they proposing? We're very happy to have here Luc Vernet from Farm Europe, who will introduce us into what is the current legislative proposal, and there will be time for some Q&A afterwards. So Luc, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello everybody, and thank you for the invitation. For the PowerPoint, can I have the remote control or? Okay, so I will. Okay. So I will say that, no problem. So thank you very much for the invitation and for the initiative. As before starting going through my slide and the key elements that I will share with you, I want to make two disclaimers. The first one, I say it first because I think I really agree with what was said, but it will not be reflected in my PowerPoint, is that clearly as Farm Europe, we are a think tank based in Brussels, and we see those techniques and these proposals that I will present in a neutral way, promising. So I say that, and then it will be a part of the discussion. And the second disclaimer is that indeed we've read carefully the leak that was done a few weeks ago. Today, the final version, but we read it faster than the previous one, and we see that there are a few changes in the final text that we see. So we will have to process it again, and I'm sure that some of the experts next to me might have spotted other changes, so you will tell me, but this is important to have in mind that we are commenting something today that has just been presented. So that was the two disclaimer and the two remarks. The first one with my first slide that I want to make, because it's important to have it in mind. Indeed, today we are talking about so that's the first slide. Yeah, we are talking about a new initiative from the European Commission, specific targeting new breeding techniques and new genomic techniques. But indeed, it's not the only regulation that is regulating the seed sector. There are plenty of regulations, and none of the seeds that are put on the market are commercialized without proper assessment. And I think we need to have this in mind, and that's a very important point. We have more than 10 directives, I think 12, one horizontal and one sector specific, which are really providing a clear framework to the economic actors and to the seed industry. And actually, in this context, there is also another regulation that has been presented by the European Commission today, which is also reorganizing this big, important part of the regulation. But I will not present this in this first approach to kick off our discussion. So, and the second initial remark I wanted to make with the second slide is that what we are talking about is a new way of doing all things. Improvement of seeds is not something new. What these genetic innovation are providing is a way to proceed faster and in a more targeted way. Actually, a personal in bracket comment, my father now is retired, he's nearly 90. He used to work for a long time on this genetic improvement. So this is really not something new. This is something that we've been doing in agriculture and in genetics for centuries, I should say. So that's something as well to have in mind. So now turning more specifically to the proposal itself of the European Commission with the third slide on the objectives of the proposals. Indeed, no, the slide just before. No, yeah, okay, the next slide, please. Yeah. Yeah, so this topic and the discussion in Brussels started a long time ago on NGTs, I should say, because when we first started the discussion on these new breeding techniques, the official names was new breeding techniques and not new genomic techniques. So we had a slide in the wording used by the European Commission recently. So we had indeed the European Court of Justice in July 2028, and from this decision from the Court of Justice, then a work started within the European Commission on the request from the European Council for the Commission to assess carefully the various NGTs, because we are not talking about a monolith. We are talking about different techniques, and the Commission was requested at that time to make a careful assessment of the various elements of the innovative sector in seed, and to assess all the various elements. So, and we saw that during this period that the Commission consulted extensively the actors in Brussels and beyond, and it's also explained why this is a much awaited text, because clearly the Commission took the time to consult and at the end of the day, this proposal is arriving very late in the package of the Green Deal proposal. So it's one of the last, and we are heading at the end of the mandate. So that's also this consultation that took time, but it was needed and I guess useful for everybody. So now the objective of the proposal. So clearly, first and foremost, the next slide, please. Indeed, human and animal health protection and environment protection in the framework of the precautionary principle. So that's indeed the baseline of the proposal, and the Commission reminded it very carefully and stress it, including today in the presentation, during the presentation of the proposal, but also boosting innovation and sustainability in the context and with the objective of the Green Deal. That's another important general objective. And thirdly, to boost the competitiveness of EU agri-food sector. So we are at the core of, as Farm Europe, what we call the economic and environmental performance of agriculture. With this general objective, and then specific objective to this proposal is indeed find the balance between ensuring safe NGTs, food, feed put on the market, without unnecessary regulatory burdens, and making a differentiation between the simple NGTs and the more complex one. And the specific objective, which is important for for the Green Deal is indeed make a link between this technique and the ambition and our common ambition of more sustainability and improvement of the agri-food chain. So these are the general principle and objective to frame the proposal. When it comes to the scope of the proposal, so the next slide, we are focusing here on specific, not all genetic modification, mutagenesis and cisgenesis, which means that we are focusing on techniques that could occur not between non-crossable species. So that's a first point. And second point, we are talking about plants and not animals. And we know that CRISPR-Cas and all these techniques, genetic techniques, have many applications far beyond the agricultural sector, far beyond the arable sector, but also in human health and other elements. So that's for the scope. So it's a scope that is targeted. Next slide, in a nutshell, because it was already mentioned previously, we have, in general, two categories defined by the European Commission in this text, which makes at first sight the regulation itself a bit complicated to read, because we need to read it carefully in order to see what goes with which categories. But at the end of the day, it's quite clear, and the distinction is simple. On one side, category 1, there's no foreign material included. So these are the genome of one plant without foreign material. And the second category, which would fall under the GMO legislation, and therefore with an authorization process, is when there is foreign materials and more complex modification. And in this framework, I already mentioned it now, there is an important annex that is defining the parameters to be determined to be eligible to category 1, which is Annex 1, which can be changed by a delegated act. So to focus more on category 1, next slide, please. So we are not in an authorization process, even though I remind what I said before, all seeds put on the market are verified, assessed, and so on, checked. So we are in a process of verification, and the word verification refers also to the criteria that are set in Annex 1. The idea there is to check if the plants, NGTs, that wants to be eligible in category 1 tick all the box of the criteria that are defined in this annex. So that's the first element. And the second element, so these NGTs would not go through authorization process via the GMO legislation, but would be put on the market after the normal assessment of seeds. And here there are two options. Either it is put at EU level by one member state, and then it's authorized in all member states if the trial has been done in Europe and so on. And if it's done abroad by a non-EU member state, then there is an authorization process involving EFSA, the European Food Safety Authorization, that has been involved also in the process of assessing the various NGTs and advised the Commission during the whole process. And two elements to add. First, those seeds would not be would be labeled for the farmers, but not for the consumers. So farmers would be in a position to choose if they want to go for that techniques or not. And above all, a transparency register would make sure that every citizen could have transparent information on those techniques. So that's for category 1. For the category 2, which is we refer to the NGTs that are considered not equivalent to conventional seeds. These NGTs would go through an authorization process with some adaptation in comparison to the GMO regulation, with mainly, I will not go through all the details, the idea is to provide incentive for potential applicants and in particular help SMEs and provide some incentive as well to encourage a modification under this category would be in line with the objective of the farm to fork with sustainability agri-food system ambition. So traceability and labeling would therefore be mandatory, and an additional optional labeling would be possible to have, let's say, an environmental claim or a sustainability claim for this category. And important as well from a internal market point of view, the member state for this plant would not be allowed to restrict cultivation or circulation of this category in their member state. The authorization at EU level would be at EU level. So that's an important point. Heading to the end, I will just mention an important element. So that's the next slide on organic production. And I know that around this table, there will be experts in a position to discuss this with concrete experience on the ground, and I will be very happy to hear what is their position. As for the moment, organic production is banned and would not be allowed to use neither category 1 nor category 2. So that's and it will be mandatory to indicate the use of NGTs in seed and reproductive material labeling for both categories. So it's consistent with what I said for category 1, and it's up to the member state to take implementing measure for coexistence between the different filières. So that's where I will stop with just leaving you with maybe, if you allow me, if I'm not too long, less than 1 minute, 5 seconds. It's just to leave here, but I'm sure that it will be raised and discussed. First, what we have as a question is indeed the provision on organic production, but I understand that it's a request for the organic sector, but we have a question as Farm Europe now. I speak for organic as we see the potential. For category 2, number 2, the question of incentives. We have question on incentive, especially for SMEs. There are provision on the price and so on. Is it enough or not? How it will work with the sustainability criteria? And last, the interaction between this regulation and the overall seed package. And we know that some of element has been transferred between the last draft NGTs and the seed regulation. So there are clearly connections that will need to be assessed.
Well, thank you very much for this really interesting presentation and giving us an overview of what we're actually talking about. And also for giving some of the questions that we will be discussing. So we're doing a Q&A in reverse here. But I'd also like to welcome MEP Mr. Cholos, who has just joined us. I don't know if you want to say a couple of words or...
I don't want to lose time. I will come back with questions. Anyway, I am happy that we discuss about that because it's a real important file, not only from technical point of view, but also political point of view, as you know, in the complexity of the legislation related to farm to fork. So this is why I'm happy, and congratulations for the invitees, very competent people, as I can see. Thank you.
Well, in light of time, we will move the Q&A on the proposal once we've heard initial inputs from all the different stakeholders, because I think that will be able to feed into the debate. If you have some questions, please write them down, and we will come back to that afterwards. So Luc, you'll be part of the Q&A afterwards. But considering the time, I'd like to move on actually to the first speaker in the panel on sustainability and resilience on farms and food systems. And we're very happy to have with us here Vincent Martin, who will be joining us online from Rome, from FAO, to set the global context, because of course we're here today to discuss it from a European perspective, but of course we are in a global world, and whatever is decided here will have a big impact also on how things are perceived in the rest of the world. So to give us a little bit of impact on the global perspective, Vincent, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Erika, and thank you for inviting the FAO to participate in this super interesting debate. Can you hear me here and now? Yeah. Okay, excellent. Okay, so as you said, I'm going to give you the broader perspective of the situation, and just to state again that the Hungary is on the right for the second consecutive year, and healthy diets remain out of reach for about 40% of the global population. And that's why in this context, we believe that the transformation of agri-food system has become urgent, and the pace of innovation must be accelerated. And we have to look at all the options we have today for innovation. Some are digital, some are agroecological, while some others are technological and biologically based, such as gene editing, where we could say the innovation is in the seed. So gene editing is represents therefore an opportunity to address a range of complex issues and help farmers be more resilient to the effect of climate change, as was mentioned just before. It is fast developing, precise, rapid and efficient, versatile, and accessible for both public and private research, but also applicable to orphan crops. And I'm mentioning orphan crops and indigenous crops because they're very important for smallholder farmers around the world. And using new genomic techniques could also help preserve the biodiversity. So that's why it's also an important technology. Transfer of technology is relatively easy, and for this reason, it's a promising new tool for plant and animal breeding in low and middle income countries. But gene editing is not a silver bullet. As with any other technology, there are numerous ethical, regulatory, and policy issues. It's not a standalone technology, and it should be integrated into plant and animal breeding systems and used alongside other improved practices and technologies. And I understand that here the discussion is not on animal, but just on crops. It's only in combination with other technologies and innovation and proper policies, capacities, and institutions in place that it can unlock its innovative and transformational potential. So along this line, FAO has adopted the first ever science and innovation strategy that places particular emphasis on science policy interface, strengthening research for development, access to innovation, science communication, and open access to knowledge platforms. And we have prepared last year an issue paper on gene editing techniques and agri-food systems, which is evidence-based and forward-looking. It takes a broad and interdisciplinary approach, and I invite you to look at this paper, which is on our website. And we've also published another paper on gene editing and food safety, and the subtitle is Technical Consideration and Potential Relevance to the Work of Codex Alimentarius. So this is what we do also in FAO, is we provide this kind of scientific panorama on what is up there, what is the technology about, and then we let member countries to decide if it is relevant for them. On the regulatory aspect, the regulatory frameworks are critical to be able to adopt the NGT products. Through the decisions related to regulatory frameworks, the decision related to regulatory frameworks fully rests with member countries. But I just would like to highlight three key considerations. The first, that regulation must obviate unpredicted outcomes. Second, it must capture social and ethical concerns, including public trust in the scientific information that is provided. And third, regulatory approach should consider the need for international harmonization. So in conclusion, I still have 1 minute to conclude. I would say that FAO recognizes that new genomic techniques are rapidly evolving. They are creating new challenges for the regulatory system, but they are also providing potential for creating sustainable food systems. We firmly believe that strong partnerships and joint action, including with the private sector and civil society organizations, are needed to ensure inclusion and equitable access to technologies and innovation, including to gene editing. And along this line, FAO will continue to provide a neutral platform for constructive dialogue and the exchange of knowledge. So this is what I wanted to share with you on the global perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vincent. And I'm sure also we'll be able to circulate some of the reports that you mentioned that are wonderful reads. So I highly recommend that as well. And I'm sure that Luisella will be able to organize that to everyone that is here. I'd now like to give the floor to our second panelist, Deborah Piovan, who's a farmer, president of the National Federation of Protein and All Crops at Confagricoltura. Deborah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. We're very glad to be here today and bring the voice of farmers at this important venue. We have been waiting for this legal proposal to be out for quite a long time. We're happy it's out. I'll say it immediately. We hope it will be approved as soon as possible. And that is because we have some serious challenges ahead. Climate change, first of all, worries me a lot. For example, we see it in our farms. We have been seeing it for some years now. High temperatures, for example. The crops that we grow were selected when climate was cooler. So we need breeders and researchers to work on plants that are more fit for a warmer climate. And higher temperatures also have an influence on the pests and diseases that attack our crops. So we need new tools to protect our crops. There also are environmental challenges. They come, for example, from the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork that tell us that farmers will need to reduce the risk and the use and the risk related to the use of plant protection products by 50%. And we can do that, but we need alternatives. And we think that from new genomic techniques can come some interesting answers. They're not a magic wand, of course, but they can give interesting answers. In particular, I'm thinking about fungal diseases and the possibility to reduce the use of fungicides. Very interesting. To answer some of the questions that you posed in your invitation regarding, for example, technology transfer, I think that if farmers need both private and public research, so if we keep funding public research, and if we allow researchers to work together and along with farmers and address the problems that we have, find solutions together, I mean, technology transfer will be a work in progress. It comes with the process. So I really am not worried about that. Regarding social license and social acceptance, well, if we keep doing what we have been doing for years, we did in Confagricoltura, for example, to keep communicating with society, include society in this discussion, what problems we have, what solutions are at our disposal to address those problems, include society in this debate. It's a way of making everybody responsible for the solutions that we decide to use or not to use, because there are consequences also in choosing what not to use. So everybody must be made responsible for these decisions altogether. There could be some issues in coexistence that I can easily foresee. But I see a sort of a incongruity here, because in the Farm to Fork, we are told that organic farming will have to reach 25%. So at some point, organic became strategic, and that's the thing. President von der Leyen tells us that new genomic techniques are strategic and enabling. So we have these two strategic tools that cannot work together. So we need to think about this and to address this. How? I don't know. Maybe a possible solution could be to ask all kind of farming, all kind of agriculture to measure their environmental footprint. So what's the, and not per hectare, mind you, but by ton of produce, of course. What's the environmental footprint of a ton of organic wheat or grape or whatever? And what's the environmental footprint of a ton of conventional integrated pest managed wheat, new genomic techniques, wheat, grape, or whatever? I think that evidence can come out of that, and with scientific evidence and evidence-based answers, maybe altogether, very calmly, we can decide what we want for the future of our agri-food chain. I'll conclude repeating that we really need these tools, so please do approve it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah, and thank you very much for highlighting the real situation for farmers and the big challenges of having to deal with coming up with solutions to in a situation of a lot of requests for change and transforming the European agricultural system to become more sustainable, and the enormous weather unpredictability that we're seeing. And Italy, obviously, yes, this year has had particular situations with not only too warm, but also a lot of rain. I was there earlier and heard about a lot of problems there. But you talked particularly about the challenge of this, how can we have both the strategic things about organic and about NGTs, and who better to follow you than Eric Gall, who is the Deputy Director of IFOAM Organics Europe, to give your perspective on this proposal and also maybe to give some answers to Deborah.
Yes, thank you very much for your invitation and for this timely debate. Indeed, I would like to stress that I also represent farmers. Organic farming is around 10% of European agriculture nowadays. In my home country, France, it's 16% of farm employment. So yeah, there are farmers who have, I would say, a wider vision of what sustainability means and how to reach it. So thank you for giving me the opportunities to explain that as well. And first, I would like to reassure you, organic farmers and the organic sector is not really concerned about being left out of innovation, because we have quite a broader view of innovation. When I hear this debate, sometimes we get the impression, it's either we go into genetic engineering or we'll be stagnating in innovation in agriculture. That's not the case. And precisely, the organic movement takes the view that innovation, needs to look at all the aspects of what make a farming system, an agronomic system, and it's called agronomy, precisely. And we believe in agroecological innovation. If you talk to an organic farmer and ask her about, what's important for the yield of a given crop, is it the variety that they use? You will be surprised, because it's very likely that the farmer will answer that what's matter the most is the state of her soil, for example. Soils are a cornerstone of organic farming. And the organic approach to plant health care is not to rely on, a single solution like a given pesticide or a given variety, because they know, and organic breeders know, that resistance to pests and diseases will be overcome in a few generations when you rely on monogenic traits, for example. I mean, I had this conversation with apple breeders in Germany, for example, for resistance to scab. And that's why organic farmers, they employ a diversity of agronomic techniques to manage pests and diseases. You have to have healthy soils. You need to do crop rotation for that. You need to use functional biodiversity. Yes, you need to use the right varieties, but you also need to have a diversity among the variety that you use. And that's why, by the way, we welcome, the reform of the seed legislation and to have adapted criteria for the registration of organic seeds precisely as well. So this is one of the reasons why the organic movement, in its overwhelming majority, takes the view that NGTs should not be used in organic production. And I mean, it's good that we have individual voices in the organic community saying that, NGTs have a role in organic, but once again, the huge majority of organic operators believe that it's important to safeguard the possibility to have this systemic approach to innovation and to protect the reputation of organic products as well. Because whether we like it or not, consumers who buy organic products, they also expect that no genetic engineering has been used in the organic production process. Then about the proposal itself, I would say, it's fine to debate about the benefits of NGTs, but the proof should be in the pudding. I'm always amazed at the level of faith, and I use this word on purpose, on what benefits NGTs are expected to bring, because with 25 years of genetic engineering applied to agriculture and food, what do we have on the market? Herbicide-tolerant crop and BT crop, which produces insecticide toxin as well. So my point is, in the current legal framework, it is possible for a company to apply and to put, gene-edited crop on the market. It's not a reason for deregulating this far as the proposal proposes to make, because what the proposal proposes to do for NGT1, like Luc explained very well, it's exempting these entities from risk assessment and from traceability and consumer information as well. And, in a way, it's the minimum that farmers might know when they buy seeds, whether NGTs have been used or not, but it is not enough because precisely, why do we have coexistence measures in Europe? It's because there are gene flows. There can be contamination at the field level. If a member state do not have a legal basis, even for saying there should be at least, 10-meter separation distances between fields with NGTs and fields with no NGT, then there will be no coexistence possible. So that's why it's essential to reinstate traceability in this proposal about NGT, so that all operators all along the production chain can know whether NGTs have been used or not, also the processors, and we believe up to the final consumer as well. But there is a last point, and I will finish on that. Why is traceability essential? It's because of the issue of patents. Because very clearly, and I invite you as policymakers and members of the European Parliament to be very attentive to that. And it's a concern not for the organic sector, it's a concern for all farmers' organizations. We have a thriving breeding sector in Europe. And the European model of innovation in breeding is based on the free circulation of genetic resources. A breeder can use a variety protected by a plant variety right to do its own breeding work. But increasingly, there are more and more patents on genetic material and on traits as well. And this is led precisely by genetic engineering and gene editing. If you look at the patent application, who has patent applications on gene edited? There are 100 applications filed by Corteva, which is a US company, and I think 60 applications for Bayer and Monsanto as well. And I can tell you, even breeders and farmers who believe in the potential of NGTs are very much concerned with development. So I really urge you, dear members of the European Parliament, whatever our differences of view on, whether NGT will bring benefits or not, please safeguard the European breeding sector and the European breeding of innovation and maintain traceability, because as long as the European legislation does not prevent patents on traits which can be obtained by conventional breeding, traceability is the only thing that protects farmers and breeders from threats of legal infringement by patents. So thank you. I will stop here for now.
Thank you very much. And I have the most wonderful panel because you're all introducing each other so wonderfully, leading one to the other. So, very little work for me to do. But I think you raised a lot of interesting questions. And of course, who better to give the floor to now than Petra Jarasch, who's manager for plant breeding innovation at Euroseed. So really taking over from the conversations from Eric. Petra, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Erika, and also thanks a lot for the invitation. I have some slides. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Just very quickly to introduce us, we are representing the European seed and breeding sector with 34 national seed associations and many companies. Next slide, please. Well, it takes a while. I just want to say innovation is, let's say, at the heart of the seed sector. And I just want to say 20%, up to 20% of the turnover of our companies is reinvested in research and development. So this is also why this topic is really important for us. And I think we have a track record of being innovative by just putting 4,000 new varieties each year on the European market. And that's, I think, really a track record that is shown by figures here on that slide. Next slide, please. Plant breeding has also already contributed in many ways to the objectives of the farm to fork strategy by just putting varieties forward which are resistant to pests and diseases, have a better shelf life to reduce food waste, etc. And in total, and if you click again, plant breeding has contributed 66% to the crop productivity growth in Europe already today. But this is slowing down just because of the challenges, for example, of climate change and new pests and diseases. And in addition, and that was already mentioned earlier, the farm to fork strategy has some ambitious goals, which also put pressure on the productivity in crop production. And that's why, in fact, breeding needs to speed up in order to help compensating those production challenges. Next slide, please. Next, please. So also to bring context to the discussion, we talk about new genomic techniques, but in fact, breeding has been innovative and putting forward techniques, new techniques since the discovery of the laws of genetics by Gregory Mendel. And these tools add to the plant breeder's toolbox. It's not one technique's exchanges for the other techniques. No, it's really a toolbox which needs to be sufficiently full in order to be able to do the best in breeding and to be highly innovative. And I would become a bit technical on the next slide because why is the current GMO ruling regulation really a challenge for the sector? Next slide, please. Breeding is an ever turning cycle of creating genetic variation and then selecting the best plants. And that's the breeding cycle which breeders follow independent of the technology which is used to introduce genetic variation. And if you click again, next slide. There are different ways to introduce these genetic changes. And I just mentioned it here because you will find those technology or these genetic changes again in the legal proposal. Click next, please. There are many different ways to introduce the same kind of genetic variation, and that makes it so difficult today because you cannot distinguish how this genetic variation has been introduced. And if you regulate some of those technologies as GMOs and others not, you will not be able to actually enforce your regulation because you're not able to identify the regulated product. The only technology which is different here, next slide, please, is transgenic GMOs, because here you really have a genetic signature which is identifiable and you can really define your regulated product. And I just mentioned that here because you will come across those terms again when you read through the proposal. Next slide, please. So what are we having today? We have three kinds of products today, which is conventional products. We have Annex 1 exempted GMOs, so classical mutagenesis, for example, and we have GMOs. And if you click again, next slide, with the Commission proposal, we get two additional categories. One is called NGT category 1, and the other is called NGT category 2. This is all based on the draft because we hadn't just the time to prepare the slides based on the final regulation. But what you can see here, it's kind of a scattered picture. Although the Commission claims that NGT category 1 is conventional-like. There are some distinct rules for seed bag labeling and also for not allowing those products for organic farming, so which makes them a distinct category. For NGT category 2, there seem to be some changes in view of this herbicide tolerance, which was supposed to be category 2. This seems to be out, which is now into the PRM regulation, which was mentioned also already. But also here, we have some differentiated rules compared to the classical GMOs. So in fact, we currently have 5 categories, while, next slide, please. If you look at the global level, many countries really make it a bit easier. They say it's either conventional or it's GMO. And this is a growing number of countries, which you can see here on this map in dark green. They do it like that. And so the Commission tends into the same direction, but not, let's say, up to the final point. Next slide, please. Just to conclude, I think I could show you plant breeding has this proven track record of boosting sustainability. NGTs for us is just another tool in the toolbox of breeders to be more precise, more efficient. And in many countries, and I think also the Commission somehow acknowledges this, NGTs can lead to GMO-like products or conventional-like products. And Europe should join this increasing number of countries which take this regulatory approach. The current proposal from our perspective is a reasonable starting point for that, also be more aligned with other regulations around the world. Yet we have some regulatory considerations here that lack maybe scientific evidence and also create some inconsistencies as well as some complexity in view of this process, which is foreseen to verify the regulatory status. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petra. I'd now like to give the floor to Corrado Finardi, Director of Agri-Policies at Coserel.
Thank you for having me. I have also a PowerPoint presentation. Not sure. Okay, but first reaction to what already said. Yeah, we are traders, commodity traders. So we came back under the spotlight because of this aggression unjustified of Ukraine. You have seen on your TV screen the cargo containers with the grains delivered all over the world. So our sector is indeed key to deliver food security. And we are key part of this open strategic autonomy, which is also the new narrative of the European institutions. And not just because it is fashionable, but because the European Union is a breadbasket. And we need also to ensure this feature of food security. As a middle of the food chain players, we don't have patents. We are not interested. We trade conventional crops and organic crops likewise. So we are kind of neutral players here. What we have always been advocating is clarity of the legislation, predictability, harmonization, coherence at the international level. Because each time we see a rift in legislation, we suffer of hindrance of delivering food. So our task is pretty simple because we need to deliver food, but at the same time, quite complicated. And you know what? Sometimes we build ourselves the complication. So we erect artificial differences by complicating legislations. So I come back very easily saying that we have, I would say, two different goals and objectives in supporting new genomic techniques. The first one is indeed about having a clear, predictable regulatory framework at the EU level, which is compatible with the science in the first place, but also tenable at the international level in order to keep the burden on food business operator proportionate. We don't say low, we say proportionate and enforceable, because as it was already shared, sometimes it is not even possible to detect, to legally identify, and then to trace the genetic variations. And this, please consider this because it's indeed relevant. And we trade in the order of 15,000 tons for each cargo. So a rejection or consignment makes a huge difference. The second goal is instead mid to long term. So we indeed want NGTs to have a role inside the Farm to Fork and Green Deal, and also in this new food security equation. We need to maintain the EU production. We trade as much inside the European Union as we import or export with the external regions of the world. So even here we are quite neutral, and we are quite sympathetic to the farmers in terms of addressing their real concerns. At the same time, we see NGTs as a vital tool to maintain our autonomy and also not lag behind in the R&D run. Next slide, please. So again, we can reckon with you about the introduction of the two categories, but at the very core of the new proposal, and we know it is still the very inception, so it could indeed turn out very different at the end of the European Parliament and Council discussion. We are talking about a breeders' pool. So indeed, as said before, we are not talking about genes coming from the outside, and sometimes, and quite often for category 1, these same genes could have happened in nature. So it doesn't make a clear sense to have a separate differentiation, or to say, as I heard before, contamination. This is not contamination. DNA is recombining itself constantly. So this is a matter of fact, and we should also act all responsibly as stakeholders in properly informing our audiences out there. We had enough of this information during this Ukraine invasion. Sorry to say that very bluntly, but we have to sit down, align on some basic wording, and get science right. We have the European Food Safety Authority, which is an institution, and it is a science, and these are indeed conventional like varieties. For category 2, we understand that there is appreciation from the society, and there are different feelings. So as said by Euroseas, there are also not clear boundaries. And for this, we are also witnessing this further emergence of category. Next slide, please. At the very core, I would say, of the substantial uncertainty in the current legislation, which is still positive, because we can see that category 1 at least could be fine-tuned with the needs of third export countries. There is this patchy, scattered, circular and incoherent definition of GMO. So this is causing a lot of frictions and problems. And indeed, we would welcome a better and clearer definition, because we may see that many problems could be solved. The Commission study in 2021 asked for a clarification of definitions, but unfortunately, this is not coming with the current draft legislation. And this will be a source of problems also for the years to come. Please mark my words. If we are not covering this GMO definition, it will be very difficult, because one part of the food chain, the organic sector, will claim they are GMO, even category 1, and other stakeholders will say, no, these are not GMO. So we need clarity. For the interest of everyone around this table, we need to better define also GMO definition. Next slide, please.
1 minute.
Yeah. Okay, so we see some complication again for this category 1, and the regulatory destiny must be indeed clarified. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so we need indeed to put our food chain in line with what is happening and quickly developing in the rest of the world. Is a matter of consistency, and science is science everywhere in the world. So we should come up with consistent and harmonized definitions. Next slide, please. As trade, of course, we benefit of this harmonization and coherence. It's okay, welcome that some players may want to maintain separate food chains. At the same time, and this holds value for the organic, but also for other supply chains, if you want to separate, you pay a premium price, and the consumers want to pay this price because they recognize this value. If by chance this value is not recognized by the food chain, you cannot ask the other players to pay for it, and then you receive the benefit in terms of a premium price. So this just also to enter some conversation with the organic sector, we say that conventional players should pay the cost of segregation. So we find this unjustified for at least category 1 varieties, because they will not be different with respect to indeed conventional varieties. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So also, I want to set the bar right in terms of definitions. We heard that NGTs are the new GMOs. Okay, this is not even comparing Apple with peers. It's comparing sort of Tesla with Route 66. So on the one hand, we have a carrier. On the other hand, we have the end product. So there are two different things. And for the consistency's sake, we should not mix them up. And I believe this can help frame a fairer and more inclusive debate. Then the technology curse. I've heard also, yes, this is not the magic wand or the magic bullet. We all agree. I never heard a different version of the reality. But at the same time, please go to the field in Ukraine saying they don't deserve Javelin or FS-16 or HIMARS artillery system. They will say, no, we have good soldiers, we have a good strategy, but we need the technology. So the technology indeed forms part of the solution, and the solution here is called Green Deal and Farm to Fork. So there are no objectives which are outside this narrative, but inside this, NGTs can play a role. For the sake of time,
yes,
I stop here.
Thank you very much. This is really very interesting, and we will be able, I'm sure there's a lot of questions coming in already. Keep them coming, both on the chat, on the WebEx, and also write them down, and we'll have soon start the debate. But before that, I'd like to give the floor to Ana Maria Bravo, who's chair of Europa Bio, Industrial Biotechnology Council, and IFF. Ana Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for the opportunity to bring into this discussion the perspective of another sector that's going to be impacted by this NGT proposal. And this is the wonderful world of microorganisms. Europa Bio represents industrial biotech industry, where we use, in addition to just microorganisms, genetically modified microorganisms, such as yeast, bacteria, or fungi, to make a diverse range of products that you find already in the food today, but also in non-food applications such as detergents. Today, many of these products are made with GMs, and the supermarket shelves would be empty by 70% if we didn't use these types of technologies for food and feed. Our customers buy them because GM-derived products improve the sustainability, the safety, the quality of the products that are already out there. And so even if we've used these technologies for about 50 years, there's a huge untapped potential with the microorganisms that we have today. And we can really do much more for improving the sustainable food systems to make our food of the future more sustainable and resilient to all these external pressures that we've been talking about. And modern technologies like NGTs are part of that solution. So while we don't focus on plants, this proposal will impact microorganisms. And this is because we are already using that very same technology today that is about to be regulated. So a few comments on the proposal. Of course, we welcome the proposal. We see the effort from the Commission to take a first good step towards a science-based legislation. But in our view, this is not enough. It's not future-proof. And by that, I mean, it's not able to keep up with the fast pace of innovation that is happening in this field. Only 3 types of techniques are being addressed in this proposal, while there's so many more that are being used. And so it's going to become outdated very quickly. So In our view, these legislations like the NGT should not be prescriptive on the type of techniques to be used. It shouldn't be prescriptive on the size limitations to define one category or the other, nor the types of traits that are considered sustainable. We don't know how these challenges are going to continue to come our way, and we will evolve innovation to address them. That is for sure. So policy should instead focus on regulating the characteristics of the end products and focusing on the environmental footprint, as you mentioned, Deborah, but also generally more broadly, the sustainability footprint. And so we should be focusing on the products and not the technology used to make them. This is a risk for companies that are members at Europa Bio. We are innovative companies that need that long-term legal certainty to continue to innovate in this space. And then the other concern we have, of course, is that this proposal does not cover microorganisms, unfortunately. For that reason, we think that beyond the NGT proposals, a more fundamental revision of the outdated legislation, the GMO legislation, needs to be taking place. So what sort of products could we be providing if we used NGTs in microorganisms? Well, I'll start with a first example, probiotics. Today, our customers are asking for more efficient probiotics. Probiotics for humans, for animals with enriched vitamins, and that can provide a better resistance against contaminations of fungi or bacteria like Listeria, which are big, big problems today. Another example is nitrogen-fixing bacteria that can convert atmospheric nitrogen into fertilizers without having to use some synthetic substances. So what do we need to be able to deliver these even better products and to increase the sustainability and resilience of the food chains? Well, we know that there's ongoing work within the institutions on evaluating the case for microorganisms and NGTs. We're happy that that's happening in parallel to this proposal on plants, but we need to speed this up because it will impact our sector and we need that legal certainty that we've been talking about. We also believe that the GMO legislation needs to be revised urgently to consider the scientific advances on our organisms. And so for that, we would want to see in this proposal for the NGT legislation that it will be specifying that they will address the GMO legislation, which is, as you say, the bigger challenge that we're going to have very closely afterwards. And why is there this urgency? Because science is already outpacing what is happening and what the regulations are doing. There's already examples of other technologies that are outdated in parts where this is regulated. So we need to remain flexible and make legislation relevant to keep up with that science. We also see an urgency because of the competition between the regions. We know that this is increasing. The world is moving very fast. Europe is getting behind. But not only that, many are no longer waiting for Europe to take a position on these things, such as the African countries and others that have traditionally done that. And there's also urgency because we need to mitigate all the challenges that we have with that are happening in terms of food security, climate change, resilient supply chains, etc. So in conclusion, a revision is imperative to make EU farms and food systems more sustainable, but also to allow Europe to remain competitive in a global economy. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for this amazingly broad and multifaceted introduction to the theme. I think we all have a lot now to think about. Now it's the Q&A time. So if you have a question, please don't be shy. Raise your hand and I will try to get. We're already starting to get some questions also from the audience online. I will give the floor to you, Bernd.
Thank you very much.
And please remember quite short questions so that we can have more of them. So.
Very short questions to Ms. Bravo. Would your problem be solved if the proposal would be amended from plants to plants and microorganisms?
I wouldn't say amended, but it would have been good that we're part of that scope. We have a significant comments and concerns about the approach of it, but we would have wanted it to be handled in parallel indeed to address the fact that we're going to be impacted by setting this precedent with plants. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're also getting some questions from the audience. I'll start with the first one that from Bernd Halling says, how will the new legislation affect innovation? Are the incentives in the legislation enough? That's one question. I will read a couple of them so that we can answer then a little more. And please, if you have a question, raise your hand and I'll try to get to you. We also have a question from Germain Vigi from GeneSprout. In category 2, there could be plants obtained with NGT that cannot be distinguished from conventional products. Is it not a contradiction with category 1? So this I will address to you, Luc. And then we have a question from René Casters. Will the regulatory proposal, if enacted, enable SMEs to enter the market with edited small crops for niche markets? So that's another question. So I'll start by giving the floor to Luc, and then maybe Vincent, if you're there on the innovation question as Director of Innovation at FAO, and the question about SMEs, anyone who will want to answer that or who has a view, maybe Petra.
Thank you. I will try to respond, but I'm sure that the seed sector will be also in a position to do it very, very efficiently. So no, I think things are quite clear between category 2 and category 1 in the proposal of the Commission, with criteria that are in Annex 9 and the number of changes that are done with genome. So I think it's pretty clear, and it depends what we call similar, things that are similar. So in terms of transformation, it's for the Commission, they set in particular this threshold of 20 genetic modifications. So indeed, we can discuss, especially those who will be at 21, but that's always the challenge for the Commission. And on our side, we understand this approach from the European Commission. But maybe a very practical thing, because the first question was on sustainability, because for now many years we are accompanying a specific sector. Which is also in Europe, but far away. So it will make us travel a bit because we are following closely a project with the banana sector, which we have some European banana grown in Europe, and that's a very interesting sector because it is affected, as all the tropical agriculture, with very strong pest pressure, much stronger than what we can imagine. And there is what we call the black cicatoca, and I'm sure that some of you will have heard about it. And this sector, I mention it because it's interesting. Today, the number of solutions when it comes to treatment against black cicatoca is going down. As a result, really, the plants, the farms are collapsing, and they are losing all capacity to cope with the competitiveness of banana from South Africa and so on, where they have the tools. So if we do not have this tool, indeed, I fully agree with the systemic agronomic approach. But today, if we do not have these tools, and we are about to have the banana that is resistant to black cicatoca, thanks to CRISPR-Cas modification. And what will be important if we want to achieve our farm-to-fork objective is a matter of timing. And the timing between the ambition of the farm-to-fork, the threshold, the target, especially, for example, in the pesticide regulation, and the implementation of this regulation. Because otherwise, we could end up in a situation, and I give this example, as for a few years, we would not have any solution, and then we would simply stop this production. So that's a concrete example of the link and the connection between the various elements of the farm-to-fork package.
Thank you very much. Vincent, do you want to add something on the innovation question? Otherwise, I'll give the floor to Petra. No, Vincent, there, you're back. Go.
Yeah, I'm trying to master the technology. Yes, on the innovation, I mean, I haven't looked at all the new legislation in very much detail. What I can say is I think by having such a legislation, definitely, I mean, and it can be improved from what I'm hearing, but it can really unlock the potential and the innovation and transformational aspect of this technology. And just to give you, and again, I want to bring the global perspective, just to give you an idea that here I'm not talking about the European Union, but countries in the global south are also very much looking at what is happening in the sphere and the discussion you are having. And when, if Europe take a stance on considering NGTs as GMO, and without such a regulation, then it tends to slow down the adoption of these techniques in other countries. I'm not saying it's general, but it can happen. And therefore, I can see also the potential of having a good regulation that is promulgated by the at your level, that could have also the potential for unlocking innovation in the global south. This is what I could say from this more global perspective, I would say. And then, yes, regarding the incentives, are they enough or not? I think it's not my responsibility to really tell you if the incentives that are mentioned in the new regulation are enough or not, but I think they are there at least to really to bring to another level of innovation, I would say. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the incentives for SMEs, I mean, they are implemented for category 2, which is a GMO. And it's pretty clear for us, and we have said this already before, if products are regulated as GMO, SMEs will not be able to put them on the market. For category 1, I would say, yes, there is an option for SMEs to innovate in this category if these products are treated conventional-like, and we see that in many other countries. Yesterday, I attended a meeting online in Argentina, where Argentinian regulators and Chilean regulators were talking about their regulations and the kind of developers approaching them. And it's almost 80% local developers and small and medium-sized companies. So if the regulation is right, those companies can innovate.
Thank you very much. Eric, so you want to...
Yeah, no, thank you for giving me a floor about innovation. It's the core of the discussion. I mean, the example that Luc took is quite striking. It reminded me about, French farmers protesting because they want to continue using neonicotinoids for beetroot because of the issue of jaundice. I don't know how we say in English. Okay. I mean, if we stay in the same agriculture systemic framework of innovation, we need to make a choice. Neonicotinoids were approved in the 90s in the name of innovation, in the name of giving solutions to farmers. And then they were banned 30 years after because we realized the massive role they played in the disappearance of pollinators and insects. So that's why we have a precautionary principle in Europe. My point here is, even if we manage to find a solution with CRISPR-Cas9 for the disease that you mentioned for banana, how long will it last? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then we will need to find another genetic modification, So at some point, I think that's why we need really this transition to agroecology, because we need to give space to this systemic agronomic approach to innovation as well. And just one last word. I mean, of course, it's a geopolitical issue. I mean, 20 years ago, it was the same. We know that the US, Canada, South America, the countries that use GMOs and export them, that they want the EU to have the same legal system as them and no impact on trade. Of course, it's a battle, but I mean, European Union is the largest market in the world. Yes, the standards we set are watched. And I think there are also very high expectations from many countries for Europe to maintain the biosafety standards that we've set 20 years ago and that remain a model for providing freedom to use or not such technologies in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a comment here from our chair.
Very quickly, because there is the example of banana, but there is also the example of hazelnuts. So hazelnuts now, we have no more treatment for hazelnuts. So the result is that in 2 years' time, the production of hazelnut in Europe has totally stopped. And we import 85% of our hazelnut from Turkey that is done exactly with all the pesticides that we have banned. So either we find solutions and we have the tools to find solutions, either we find, and to be totally very clear on the size of the problem, Europe is by far the largest consumption of hazelnut. Maybe there is something with chocolate that helps us, but the reality is that the total market of hazelnut is 1 million tons planet-wise. It's balanced, but Europe is 500, it's half that we consume, that we eat. But now the total French production is less than 1 day of production of the said factory of the said Italian pasta. So there is either we eat things that we change totally our food, but I remember that in France there were riots once that this particular brand did a very strong promotion, and either we try to find solution, but importing the food that we do not want is just cynical.
Thank you. I have two questions on our guest, Mr. Gal. The one, maybe the reaction you said that the import of GMO products, GMO maize, soja, there is no impact on the European market. It's not true. You can ask farmers, and there is impact, of course. That's why we want to ban, and when we want to stop this problem in competitiveness of our EU farmers. It's not possible to say there is no impact. It's a huge problem. We can speak deeply, but I think it's a big misunderstanding. And but my question is, because yesterday I met my friend, which is organic farmer, and he asked me about new genomic techniques, and I explained him that in the proposal there is a ban for organic farming, and he was very angry. And I said him that it's not my problem. Because it's the proposal of Commission. My question is how I can answer him, what you can say him, because your general approach that is not favorable for organic farming. I understand some reasons, but why we should have this general approach? Why it should be obligatory? Why not optional? Freedom of choice. Yes, I ask you on behalf of one organic farmer.
Okay, thank you for your questions. I think nobody forces any farmer to be organic, you know. And if we start to blur the lines between organic farming and conventional production, consumers will stop buying organic product because they will like, well, what's the difference? You know, why should I pay more as well? So that's why there are principles and a clear regulation in organic production. As well. And once again, the majority of our members, they adopted a resolution last week, are in favor of not allowing this in organic production. And let me tell you, I'm happy to have this conversation in 5 years again, when we can assess the concrete benefits of NGTs concretely, because for the moment, we're talking about assumptions. There are 2 products on the market in the US, and I don't think the US is hindered by legislation on NGTs. We have one soybean, I think, and one oilseed rape. So I don't think it's a problem. It's a matter of regulation in Europe. And when you say, and I will finish because you asked me the question, how do European farmers lose because they cannot grow GMOs? We import GMOs. They are used for animal feed. It's herbicide-tolerant soya, which is grown in the US and in South America. If it has a benefit, it's for the farmers in South America and in the US. It's not for the European farmers who feed soya to their animals. It doesn't make a difference whether, it's herbicide tolerant to glyphosate or not. So I'm not sure I understand this argument. We believe that European farmers have benefited from being largely GMO-free, precisely in Europe, because what we export in Europe, our model is to export, added value product, high quality product. We will never be able to compete with South America in terms of soya production or protein production.
I think we'll be able to talk about this for a long, long time, and there will be ample time also afterward, fueled by drinks, courtesy of the EFF. But I'd just like to give the option to Deborah to say a last comment, and also to Anna Maria before we
Thank you very
move
much.
over to the next panel.
Thank you. European farmers, and I can testify to that, lost a lot from the ban on GMOs, especially from the consequence that scientific research hindered and stopped. Italian corn producers, we produced enough 10 years ago of what we needed, 100%. Now we import half of our need of corn, and we use that corn to produce our top quality ham, cheese, and everything. It's a nonsense. It's the so-called made in Italy nonsense. We just asked for corn that could avoid insecticide, and we had to keep using insecticide, but still it's not enough. We didn't want to pollute that much and keep polluting. And corn production, corn hectares halved in 10, 15 years. Also, there are several crops on the pipeline made with genome editing. I just want to tell you one, because it's made by a very dear friend of mine. It's rice that's resistant to a fungal disease. I don't know the English for it. It's a blight, I think. And we have several problems with rice in northern Italy, and that could avoid fungicides.
Thank you very much. Anna Maria, 30 seconds, because we're very, very late, and I apologize for that.
30 seconds. Okay, I think mine is, my last message is a plea for innovation, that we really need to not limit who gets access to the innovation. It should be open to everybody. And at the same time, we really need to focus on product-based regulation and not process-based in technologies, because this will continue to evolve.
A big round of applause to all our panelists. And thank you very much for showing the enormous complexity and variety. And I also have to say, I think it's been amazing to see also the care and the length that the Commission has taken in trying to do something that will actually respond to the very real concerns of all different stakeholders, because everything is obviously very relevant, and it's important to understand that. And I think that at least this is a trial to do something that will hopefully create a good regulatory system for Europe. So thank you very much. And as we're running a little bit late, without further ado, I'll hop over directly to our next panel, which will be looking at traceability, labeling, international standards, coexistence, and freedom of choice, the pending question marks. So very easy topic again. Now I think in half an hour, we will solve all these problems. And to start us off, I want to give the floor to Oana Dima, who is EU SAGE Coordinator and Science Policy Manager at VIB Ghent University Center for Plant Systems Biology. Oana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Erika. Good evening, actually, everyone. I have the presentation too, so I will wait until it starts. Next slide, please. So I was asked to present today the scientific side of this whole debate. So I am the executive manager of the EU SAGE Network. EU SAGE Network stands for the European Sustainable Agriculture Through Genome Editing. And we have over 150 members from different European countries. And these are research institutes and universities which work on plant biotechnology. And this network was created in order to enable the potential of genome editing in the European agriculture. Next slide, please. I will repeat again. So I was asked to tell a little bit about the plant breeding and specifically on the NGTs. So even though I'm in the traceability labeling coexistence panel, I will give a small introduction on the plant breeding and CRISPR. So thanks to plant breeding, we have all these fruits and vegetables that we eat today on our plates. And you can see on the upper side of the screen the ancestors plants from which the current crops resulted. So first it was the teosinte plant, and now we have maize thanks to plant breeding. From such a mustard plant, we have all the brassica family. So we have cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, and I even looked today, like in 2019. Let me look for that. The total global production of brassica was approximately 132 million metric tons, and that's all due to plant breeding. Otherwise, we would be there with this mustard plant upstairs on the upper panel. And also the tomatoes and other vegetables and fruits. They're bigger, tastier, more colorful, and basically they produce food for us. Next slide, please. And as Petra mentioned already, this is due to the 10,000 years of plant breeding. And there have been different innovations throughout this time. And there was the Mendel's law of genetics, and later on different other tools that added to the plant breeders' toolbox. Next slide, please. And the latest innovation is the precision breeding, which we have right now. And here, Petra also already mentioned this nomenclature, and this is also appearing in the proposal of the European Commission. So we have different breeding techniques. We have the selective breeding, which is also crossing of plants with different traits, and we aim to obtain a plant with the desired traits from the progeny of these plants. And this is a very good method. This is the main plant breeding method that we use right now. It is, though, time consuming. We have also mutagenesis. The plant breeders can use mutagenesis, and this is induced with the chemicals of radiation. And this method creates many mutations in the plants. So, for example, for wheat, it is easily 500,000 changes due to mutagenesis. And hopefully one of these changes will lead to a trait that we are looking for. So this requires a lot of screening too. And it's completely random. So the changes are introduced randomly. Then we have the transgenic technologies. So here the result is the GMO plant. And this technology is based on the insertion of a genetic material from another organism to our targeted plant in order to obtain the variety that we are looking for. And in the end, we have CRISPR or new breeding techniques, new genomic techniques, precision breeding, where we can introduce change into the genetic material of the plant very precisely. And we know exactly where this change would occur. And in the end, within all of these methods, we can obtain the same result, the same plants with the same traits. It's just that these techniques differ, and they can be shorter or longer in time. There can be more precise or less precise. So next slide, please. So with genome editing, we can obtain the plant varieties in a specific way. We can do it in a precise manner, and it is very efficient. So this method is also much faster compared to the crossbreeding. So compared to the crossbreeding where we can obtain the new variety in about, for example, 8 breeding cycles, in CRISPR, we can do it in around 2 breeding cycles. And next slide, please. EUSAGE made an interactive database with different examples of the new breeding techniques that are researched with the genome editing applications in crops. And in order to inform everyone on what is going in the research worldwide, and currently we have over 740 different examples of the new genomic techniques applications in crops. Next slide, please. And this is the summary of the database. If you look on the trait categories, so here the context is a little bit different than with the GMO discussion. We have, based on this study, we have the trait categories such as an improved food and feed quality. And this is the modified composition of components such as vitamins, toxic substances, starch, oil, fibers, allergens, and so on. Then another one, which is on ex aequo, is plant yield and growth. So here we, thank you. Here we focus on the increased yield related to the photosynthetic efficiency, to fruit size, weight, increased numbers of flowers, seeds, and fruits. And then the third one is the biotic stress tolerance, which is actually also almost on the same level, which is the resistance to plant diseases caused by bacteria, viruses, fungi, pests, pathogens, meaning that if we have this kind of plant varieties, we would need to use less pesticides or chemicals for the breeding of these plants. Next slide, please. And here I would like to give you just out of the 740, just 3 examples of the new genomic techniques applications. For example, in grape wine, which this grape wine is would be resistant to fungus. There is the pennygrass. It can be used outside of cropping season, and it is used to protect soil and control carbon loss. And more tolerant rice, so it's the rice with better tolerance of low nutrient conditions and high resistant to pathogens and insects. Just some 3 examples. Next slide, please. Yes. And the next one. Next one, please. Very, very fast. Next one. And next one. It's next one, please. Next one. Yes. So I just want to come to the because it was mentioned, like what crops derived from genome editing are available on the market. So these 2 were already introduced a little bit earlier on the market, and this is indeed the high oleic soybean in the US and the GABA-enriched tomato in Japan. Next one, please. And very recently, we have also the nutrient-rich mustard leaf in the US, indeed, the waxy corn in Japan, and the non-browning banana in the Philippines. So that's just to give the context of what is available now on the market. So this is what's happening outside of Europe, and it's going to develop pretty fast. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I know it's really difficult to present all this complexity in 5 minutes. This is really fascinating, and we will make all the presentations available so you can go and look, and this database that you have built is really worth looking at. I will give the floor now to Bernd van der Meulen, who is the director of the European Institute for Food Law, to give your view. And I am really sorry, but I know we are pressed for time, so I will ask you to try to keep to the 5 minutes. Thank you.
We're there. That helps as well. Thank you. I've been asked to look at the next slide, please, at the proposal from the perspective of a lawyer. And the first question I would ask as a lawyer, which problem does the proposal want to solve? And the closest thing to a problem definition that I could find is the quote here, long story short, the GMO legal framework is not fit for purpose. And much to my surprise, what the proposal largely is doing is keeping the GMO legal framework, which is not a problem only in the way it is regulated, but also, as Ms. Sojdrova indicated earlier today, the stigma it gives. A GMO legislative framework is a graveyard. It has existed now for 25 years or something. Only one crop is currently authorized for growing in the fields. And all the foods and feeds that are authorized are virtually absent from the market for consumers. Next slide, please. What is the proposed solution? This is a rather complex regulatory structure consisting of at least 4 elements. There is this new regulation, which in some situations excludes the GMO legislation. In other situations, includes it, and then by way of derogation, does things slightly different. The novel foods regulation still plays a role, etc. A user-friendly alternative would have been to make one complete legal framework for the field that you want to regulate. Next slide, please. The things that we want to achieve, I think they are threefold. You want environmental safety, you want consumer safety, and you want consumer information. Well, the category 1 products are excluded to a large extent, at least, from assessment for environmental safety. And for category 2, to a large extent, GMO legislation applies. Consumer safety is distinguished into non-food use and food use. Category 1 excludes for food use the GMO framework, and then brings in the novel foods framework, which is just as onerous for applicants as the GMO framework. And then consumer information applies only to category 2. Next slide, please. One remark to the side, and I was already fearing that my PowerPoint would be, well, anyway, the Annex 3 here provides the criteria for distinguishing category 1 from category 2. And I would raise one point of concern. The legislator is not concerned about traits that are about tolerance, resistance to biotic stresses, diseases caused by bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other pests. We've seen in classic genetic modification that other pests includes insects. If you use the technology to make plants toxic to insects, I would not think that to be harmless. Next slide, please. So for whom is it good news and for whom is it bad news? Category 1 may be accessible for SMEs and knowledge institutions, but there are two ifs. The notification system at a national level with a step up to the EU level, we've seen it in the novel foods regulation, and we've seen that in each notification, Belgium would raise objections. So every notification would be taken to the EU level. If that works the same here, that's really bad news. And if every significant change, and why else would you do it, brings it within the scope of the novel foods regulation, probably not that much is gained. Category 2, in my preliminary assessment, would not be doable for universities, knowledge institutions, small and medium-sized enterprises. The whole idea of the authorization systems as we have them in the EU is that those who want to make money from the innovation are those that will have to pay. And that's why in GMOs, we've gotten the type of innovations that we've got. And what we do not get is adjustment for climate change, adjustment to new pests, adjustment to population growth, because there's no commercial interest driving it. Next slide, please. Yes, I think it is. I hope it is. If I would propose an alternative to the European Parliament, so either insist on a complete system rather than on this unworkable patchwork, or simply return to the system of Directive 2001/18 by excluding from this framework all types of mutagenesis, and the safety assessment can be done through the Novel Foods Regulation. I quoted here in full the provision in the Novel Foods Regulation that would be applicable. And I think the next slide is my thank you slide, and I hope I've stayed within the time.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, and I'm sure there will be a lot of questions. But I'd first like to give the floor to Mute Schimpf, food campaigner at Friends of the Earth Europe. Mute, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot for the invitation. My assumption is I'm invited to bring here a slightly different view because we are much more reluctant on embracing new genomic techniques than many people here in the room are. But I really believe in the diversity of debates and diversity of opinions. And I have only 3 content slides, so I won't speak longer. We are an environmental federation, the biggest grassroots European organization, and we work on climate, food, biodiversity, agriculture, and a lot of other topics. Could you show the next slide? And a lot of things have been said, so I kept my presentation quite short because if you're at the end of a long event, it's good to be a bit flexible. I focus more on the legal element of a current GMO legislation because I think there are a lot of misunderstanding and sometimes a bit too narrow definitions. First of all, what is a GMO and what is not a GMO is defined in the environment legislation, the Directive 2019, which was agreed among where the Environment Committee had the lead on. So if you want to change something, you change environment legislation. This is a starting point, and a lot of the hosts here in the Agriculture Committee, but just reflect on this because I expect debates between the committees. And then we have a specific regulation on traceability for GMOs. And if you think about traceability, you can either approach it from the technical challenge, or you can approach it from why do we have traceability? And before the Commission started the farm to fork, we had a farm to fork approach in the European Union. And this means every operator is responsible for every step where they operate with food. And if you think on this, then traceability makes a lot of sense. It's a precondition to have monitoring. It's a precondition to have a fair responsibility. It's a precondition to have liability. So the proposal from the Commission is to abolish this completely for category 1 NGT, and we do not acknowledge this. And also, if you look in the Regulation 1823, we also say it's a question of fairness and fair competition to have standard approaches for all of this in the EU. And here, again, I guess you will react on this quite strongly. The DG Sante already told the national experts, told the JRC in 2017 not to work on detection methods. And then now saying we can't detect them might be a bit simplistic. I mean, who had a corona test beginning of 2020? Nobody. And also the Joint Research Center already published an opinion, a very long, very detailed one, on challenges for detections of GMOs, the new ones, but also the old ones. Because the assumption that the current GMOs are easy to find, yes, when you talk about herbicides in soybeans, for sure. If you talk some plants that have been field tried in Central America, not at all. Even Germany, a country, my home country, is known for loving control. A flower was sold many years and nobody detected that it was a GMO flower. So just the detection challenges are not specific. Next slide, please. And if you talk about labeling, a lot of people think labeling is related to the risk of GMOs or new GMOs. Sorry to disappoint you, this is a wrong legal and political perception. If you look at the EU treaty, we have an article on consumers' rights to take a well-informed decision. If you look on the general food law, that frames how we approach food safety and how we approach food, law, it's about consumers' right to take a well-informed decision. It's not about that GMOs are risky. I mean, the approach of the European Union on food is risky food shouldn't be sold at all. Yeah, we do not label something it's risky and then we sell it. The EU institutions ensure we don't have it. So for us, the point is, if people are so convinced and companies are so convinced new GMOs are amazing products and have amazing traits, why do you want to avoid label them as GMOs? I'm not a scientist, I'm an agronomist by background. But if you read the text in many articles for NGT and for category 1 and category 2, if you want to use CRISPR, you first use the super conventional GMOs to enter the cell to introduce it, and then you outbred it. But every plant that we are talking about in category 1 was originally a super classical GMO, and then you cross it out. And if you look on the public spending to define, I'm working in environmental NGOs, so talk about environmental risk, which money has been actually used to detect impacts on ecosystem, impacts on biodiversity, how they can survive in nature, there is hardly anything done. And what I really like about, if you talk about CRISPR, the idea is you cut a cell and then you rely on the self-repair mechanism. When we all repair things. And sometimes you're proud and it's done in a minute. And sometimes after half a day, it doesn't work at all. So if you talk about nature and if you talk about self-repair mechanisms, be aware things can go wrong. And this is the reason why we need traceability and why I think consumers defend to have a right what they eat and not get rid of this. Because we think really this is definitely needed to maintain the right of consumers to take a well-informed decision. And just to be clear, somebody mentioned GMOs are banned. Sorry, this is not the case. 70 member states in the European Union decided to ban certain GMO cultivation in their territories, but more than 60 GMOs are authorized for imports in the EU. And we import a lot of feed. We do not import food because consumers don't want it. And do we really want to push consumers to eat something whilst the market have rejected it? We are not banned. Politically, GMO food is allowed in the EU. It's just not used. Consumers don't want it. This is the reason why we don't have it. So for all of this reason, I think it's the task of a lawmaker to come up with a legislation that works and not going to the details. If you look on this category 2, that could be promoted as sustainable crops. I read the law. I read the text from today. And my understanding is the companies say they are drought resistant and then they can put the label on it. Sorry, this is not lawmaking. I mean, giving a company right to label products when you don't have a baseline, you don't have anything to compare, you don't have any institution or any criteria to set it, giving companies a right, I put a label, whatever I think the product could have. I mean, sorry, I really think this period is over in the European Union, and I really hope lawmakers here in this institution can make this law work. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think there will be a lot of discussions, but I'd like to also give the floor to Mariana Rinaldi, who's joining us from Brazil. She's a specialist in institutional relations at Proteste. So to hear a little bit from the experience in Brazil, where they do have a different type of legislation. Mariana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the invitation to be here. I'm very honored. It's a privilege. Thank you. I represent Proteste. Proteste in Brazil is a non-profit and non-partisan independent organization. Please move to the next slide about Proteste. 2 more, I guess. One more, please. Yeah, thank you. And we are a organization member of Euroconsumers. And we believe we represent consumers' rights. And here in Brazil, we work for more than 22 years contributing to improve the consumers' relation in society. Next slide, please. So I would like to share with you a brief timeline about transgenic plants in Brazil. Next slide, please. And I will just talk very fast about our regulation, which started in 1995, because the soybean production was today is one of the biggest harvest in Brazil, and we needed to regulate the planting the soybean resistant to glyphosate and GM. So in 1998. Next slide, please. And in 2005, we had a review from our law, and in which principles are really similar to the EU regulation, and we are very based on precautionary principle for environmental protection. So Brazilian regulation is very similar to European, and we really look to encourage advances in many areas like biosafety and biotechnology. Next slide, please. And our current regulation has two bodies. One is political and the other one is technical, which we call National Technical Biosafety Commission. And this commission is responsible for the proving of the new technologies, which are and resolutions that are currently in use in our country. Next slide, please. This said, as you may know, I would like to point that nowadays Brazil is the second country among producing transgenic crops. We have the second largest agriculture area, only behind the US. So transgenics are almost 100% of the planted area in Brazil. Next slide, please. I would only like to point our main cultures like soybean, corn, cotton, and sugarcane are the most important harvest nowadays. And next slide, please. This graphic shows our approvals, GMOs approvals in Brazil. And we have many harvests like eucalyptus. I'm sorry, I didn't translate this graphic. The second one is bean. The third is sugarcane. The fourth is corn. The next one, the blue one, is cotton. And the last one is soybean. So year after year, the GMOs approvals are getting faster and bigger in our country. Next slide, please. And finally, I would like to point some important issues concerning consumers' protection. In Brazil, consumers' protection is provided by our federal constitution, and we also have a consumer protection code and also the biosafety law, which review consumer protection. Next slide, please. In Brazil, we have a mandatory tracking and labeling to guarantee consumers the right to choose whether or not to consume transgenic products. So here, every product that use at least 1% of ingredients made by GMO or transgenic plants must be labeled. So we use this label, the triangle with the transgenic, the T in the middle. Next one, please. And only to finish, I brought some crucial requirements for an ideal regulation or NGTs from the perspective of consumers. The first one is safety assessment. We need transparency in labeling for the ideal information of consumers, the ideal communication between them. We need to have risk assessment environmental impact assessment, public participation, compliance and monitoring, and the last one is capacity building with P&D, the research, research and technology development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very interesting perspective on how these questions have passed in Brazil. We're very sorry that you can't be here with us, Mariana, because of course I am aware of time and that we're all already over time, and at the Parliament you risk literally somebody else coming in and kicking you out. So I am aware of this. So the Q&A, I'm going to move it to where the drinks are afterwards. So I think that will help. And there's so many interesting questions and things that I want to ask. So Mariana, you will be with us there in spirit, and we will probably have a lot of questions also for you. But before ending the session, I would like to thank all the speakers. I'd like to thank the European Food Forum for organizing this enormously varied and detailed debate, outlining all these different perspectives, and also highlighting what are the core questions going to be as this debate develops in the European Parliament and at the Council level in the next couple of months, and how can we think to future-proof and actually improve this proposal even more to make it as good as possible for the European perspective. So a big thank you to everyone. And to close, I'd just like to give our hosting MEPs a couple of minutes to be able to say last points. Irene?
First of all, thank you to all of you. I must admit that at the moment I'm very self-satisfactory, because when I founded the European Food Forum, it was really because I really thought that we needed to have discussion when we have legislative work with 360 and have people that have different views and listen and hear them and really understand how us as lawmakers, we can improve the text. There are things that are not in this proposal. It's the patent issue, and we will make sure that we deliver on that in whatever way we can. And for the rest, I think that I will go out of this room less stupid than when I entered it, and I thank you for all of that.
Thank you very much.
Just very briefly, thank you all the speakers, all participants. I think the transparency first, I think it is one of the most important issue what we should ensure for transparency for consumers, of course. But what I see, we need better communication with citizens. We need good public relation to explanation, and also we need good scientific background, because I see big misunderstanding what is GMO and NGTs. It's crucial for this legislation. It's crucial. I am not a researcher, but I know the scientific approach, and we should move on the science-based approach. So this is my ask, and but I see very positive this proposal, and I look forward to this next debate and negotiation. Thank you.
Yeah, after my two learned colleagues, I have nothing to say except thank you. I learned a lot, and I'm here to talk to you and do the right thing. Thank you.
So a big thank you to everyone, and there will be drinks, and Luisella will follow the boss. Luisella, big thank you to Luisella, who's done an amazing job. And I would just like to point out one last thing, and that is we've all come to this room with different perspective, with different priorities, with a different view. But I think what we do know is that we know that the challenges that lay ahead with climate change, with the geopolitical challenges that we see, with all these shifting and trends, will need us to come together to find a solution to move forward. Because the worst enemy is stalemate and just blocking anything. Because we need to become more sustainable, we need to become more competitive, and we need to create the future food systems that European citizens want. So thank you all for coming here and contributing to that discussion.
Bravo.